Lieutenant Mara Kessler moved carefully through the jungle dome of the research station, her boots pressing softly against the synthetic soil. The dome was enormous, taller than any building on Earth and filled with trees and plants that seemed alive in more ways than one. The light filtering from above had a strange green-gold glow, giving the whole place a magical quality. Mara had spent months in this station, studying the alien fauna with her team, but she had never lost her sense of wonder. Today, though, a small test awaited her, one that she didn't quite know would go as planned. A small cub-like creature crouched near a cluster of luminous plants, its eyes wide with curiosity. Its fur was thick and mottled, a mix of bronze and deep green, and its paws were surprisingly dexterous. Despite its small size, there was a spark in its movements, a cleverness that hinted at intelligence beyond what the scientists had expected. The cub had been part of the station's study for several weeks, and while it was playful, no one had ever gotten close enough to touch it, except Mara. She approached slowly, her voice calm and soft. "Easy, little one, just relax." The cub tilted its head and sniffed the air, ears twitching. It was always alert, always testing boundaries. Mara had learned that the more she forced interaction, the more nervous it became. Today she would let it set the pace. Around the dome, other researchers watched from behind reinforced glass and control panels. Many had their hands hovering over emergency protocols, ready to call for containment if anything went wrong. Mara had long grown used to this. Humans often overreacted to the unknown, their fears sometimes clouding judgment. She, however, believed in observation, patience, and the subtle use of human intuition. The cub suddenly darted forward, faster than she expected. Mara instinctively raised her arm to shield herself, but before she could react fully, its tiny teeth caught her sleeve and tugged sharply. Gasps filled the room. Some researchers shouted warnings, pointing frantically at the screen that showed the interaction. "It's dangerous! Pull back!" Mara froze for a moment, feeling the sharp pinch of the bite. But instead of yanking her arm away, she looked down at the cub and saw only curiosity, not aggression. The little creature's eyes blinked at her, unafraid, almost amused. Mara smirked slightly. She could feel the tension of the entire team through the communication line, their panic almost tangible. "Calm," she said softly. She reached slowly with her free hand, stroking the cub's back. It made a low, satisfied, purr-like sound and released her sleeve. Mara rolled the fabric, checking for damage. Nothing serious. She held the torn edge lightly and smiled at the cub. "See, we're okay. No harm done." Through the glass and speakers, the team erupted into chatter, mostly fear and confusion. "Did she just—" "Boo," one shouted. How is she not freaking out? Mara ignored them. She had learned long ago that fear spread faster than logic, especially among humans. Her role was not just to study the creatures. They needed someone to show how humans could adapt, even in the face of unpredictable alien behavior. The cub, sensing no threat, jumped onto Mara's forearm and gently nipped at her sleeve again, almost playfully. Mara laughed quietly. The sound was calm and reassuring, echoing slightly in the dome. She noticed the cub had something resembling mischief in its gaze, as if it wanted to test her patience and cleverness. Mara had faced challenges before, humans, machines, even wild earth animals, but this was new. This was alien intelligence, and she intended to understand it. "All right, little one," she said, her voice firm but kind. "You're curious. That's fine. But let's see what we can do together." She shifted her weight and allowed the cub to climb onto her shoulder. Its small claws tickled, but she barely flinched. Around the dome, she noticed the researchers' expressions changing. Fear was slowly giving way to awe. Humans, when they saw calm confidence paired with adaptability, often respected it more than raw power. Mara was about to demonstrate that principle firsthand. For the next few minutes, she moved carefully, guiding the cub through simple tasks. She held out a small sphere used for testing coordination and watched as the cub pawed at it, pushing it around deliberately. It was clever, learning from her movements and anticipating her gestures. Mara smiled, noting every detail. The team on the other side of the monitors whispered among themselves, clearly impressed. "Lieutenant Kessler," a voice crackled through the comm. "Are you sure this is safe?" It was Dr. Hanley, the station's lead xenobiologist. His tone was a mix of worry and curiosity. "I'm sure," Mara replied calmly. "It's not aggression, it's intelligence. We just need to respond appropriately." As if understanding her words, the cub dropped the sphere and gently bit her sleeve. Again. Mara laughed, more amused than pained. "You've got a strong bite for such a small one," she said, stroking its head. "But I like your style." The cub hopped down and explored around her, sniffing and nudging, clearly testing boundaries. Mara followed, careful to let it take the lead. The humans watching began to murmur, and some even clapped softly when the cub responded correctly to Mara's gestures. She had turned a moment of fear into an opportunity to demonstrate human intelligence in action. Then came the warning lights. A low hum indicated that the station's environmental controls were adjusting due to an approaching storm outside the dome. Wind gusts shook the protective outer layer, rattling loose some of the synthetic branches. The cub froze, ears back, sensing danger. Mara crouched slightly, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. She whispered soothing words, guiding it toward a safer area near a cluster of dense alien plants. The other researchers tensed. "Containment breach!" "It could panic," one shouted. Mara ignored them again. Panic never solved anything. Instead, she leaned close to the cub, letting it see her calm expression. "We're okay. Just follow me." Slowly, steadily, she moved toward the sheltering plants, with the cub following her every step. By the time the storm hit in full force, Mara and the cub were safely in a protective alcove. The other humans, still watching, breathed sighs of relief. Mara looked down at the creature, which now seemed relaxed, its curiosity returning as the wind howled outside. She smiled. "See, humans can adapt. Calmness matters more than panic." The cub nuzzled her sleeve once more, softly this time, almost as if acknowledging her words. Mara smirked. This small alien had just taught an entire research team a lesson in trust, patience, and understanding. Bah! She had played along, demonstrated her control, and shown that humans, when clever and calm, could bridge gaps even between species that had no common language. Later, when Mara returned to the observation deck, she was met with cautious admiration. Dr. Hanley shook his head, still in disbelief. "I don't know how you do it," he admitted. "Most of us would have screamed or panicked."
"You just handled it."
Mara shrugged, brushing off the compliment. "It's not about fear or strength," she said simply. "It's about understanding. Humans can learn quickly, adapt, and respond in ways machines or instincts alone cannot. That little cub just reminded us of that." The team exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, others still skeptical. But everyone knew one thing. Mara had changed how they viewed the creatures on this planet. She had taken an incident that could have caused chaos and turned it into a lesson about human ingenuity and calm under pressure. As the storm outside raged on, Mara leaned back, watching the cub explore its temporary shelter. It pawed at a glowing plant, sniffing carefully, always alert, always curious. Mara smirked again, remembering its first bite. That small, sharp nip had sparked more than pain. It had sparked an idea. Humans didn't just survive in dangerous or unknown situations. They thrived by learning, adapting, and sometimes playing along. And Mara Kessler intended to prove that every single day she spent on this alien planet, the storm passed slowly, leaving the dome quiet except for the hum of the life support systems. Mara Kessler wiped her hands on her uniform, glancing down at the small cub. It sat calmly, its tail flicking with curiosity, as though nothing had happened. Mara could feel the intelligence radiating from the creature. It wasn't just instinct. It learned, observed, and tested, and humans were capable of understanding it in ways no one had predicted. "Looks like you survived your first real test," Mara said, crouching to meet the cub's gaze. The cub blinked slowly, its small teeth showing briefly as it chewed on the edge of her sleeve. Again, Mara laughed softly. This wasn't aggression, it was playfulness, the same way a human child might tug at a parent's clothing. Over the next few days, Mara made it her mission to train the cub, to see just how much it could learn. The other researchers were hesitant. Some called it reckless. "You're getting too close," Dr. Topic Hanley warned. "It's unpredictable. One wrong move, and nothing," Mara interrupted, smiling. "One wrong move doesn't happen if you understand a creature. Fear clouds your judgment. Patience and observation don't." Mara set up small exercises around the dome. Simple challenges at first. Move the sphere from one platform to another, follow her gestures, or react to sounds. The cub learned quickly. Within hours it could follow a basic command and even anticipate Mara's actions. The other researchers watched from their screens, slowly realizing what Mara already knew. Humans had an edge here. Technology could analyze, track, and record, but humans could improvise, adapt, and form connections. The cub was responding not just to repetition, but to trust and guidance. One morning, Mara placed a series of small obstacles along a path. The cub's task was to move through them in sequence, guided only by her hand signals. The little creature paused, tilting its head as if considering the challenge. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, it darted through the path, nimbly avoiding obstacles, pausing only when Mara signaled it to wait. By the end, it landed lightly on a platform and looked at her, as if to say, "Did I do it right?" "You did perfectly," Mara said, giving it a gentle pat. The cub purred softly, satisfied with the praise. Not everyone was impressed. The station commander, a tall, stern man named Orvik, frowned when he watched the footage. "We're not here to play with pets, Lieutenant," he said sharply when Mara reported the results. "The creatures are unpredictable. One small bite, and we could have contamination, disease, or worse." Mara leaned forward in her chair. "With all due respect, Commander, the cub isn't aggressive. It's intelligent. And humans are the only species here capable of forming this type of understanding. If we panic at every small bite, we'll never learn anything." Orvik's eyes narrowed. "Learning shouldn't put the station at risk." Mara met his gaze evenly. "Fear doesn't prevent risk. Observation, patience, and adaptability do." "I've proven it already." Orvik huffed, but didn't argue further. Mara knew that this was only the first of many battles between human ingenuity and rigid procedure. She had no intention of stepping back. As the days went on, Mara noticed that the cub was becoming bolder. It would approach new equipment, sniffing and prodding at switches, buttons, and even small drones. Mara followed carefully, letting the cub explore but staying ready to intervene if needed. The other humans often held their breath when they watched. One wrong move, and a piece of equipment could fail. Or worse, trigger an accident. One afternoon, Mara decided to introduce a new type of exercise. She placed a small, translucent box with a sliding lid in front of the cub. Inside was a tiny treat designed for the cub, something that smelled enticing but required thought to retrieve. Mara stepped back and watched. The cub approached the box, sniffing it thoroughly. It pawed at the sliding lid, but didn't immediately figure it out. Mara knelt nearby, offering guidance through hand gestures and subtle pressure on the floor to indicate the correct motion. Slowly, the cub experimented. Its paws slid the lid, hesitated, then slid it again. Finally, the lid moved fully, and the cub grabbed the treat triumphantly. Mara clapped softly. "Good job! That's exactly what I wanted to see," the other researchers on the monitors murmured in disbelief. "It's thinking," one said. "It's not just following instructions. It's solving problems." "Yes," Mara said quietly, almost to herself. "And humans can teach it. Humans can adapt." By the end of the week, Mara and the cub had established a rhythm. The little creature had learned to respond to a series of signals, recognize certain objects, and even anticipate Mara's movements in playful exercises. The bond between them had grown. Mara had begun to trust its instincts, and it had begun to trust her guidance. One evening, as the dome's lights dimmed for the night cycle, the cub curled near Mara's feet, its head resting on her boot. Mara smiled, feeling the satisfaction of someone, or something, understanding her. There was a comfort in knowing that the cub respected her, but more than that it had learned. Humans had an advantage here, an ability to improvise and adapt in ways that machines, protocols, or fear could never match. The calm didn't last long. During a routine scan the next morning, Mara noticed the cub was not where it should be. Panic didn't rise in her chest. She had learned that keeping calm mattered more than rushing, but her heart did skip a beat. She scanned the dome quickly, eyes narrowing. The cub had slipped past the exercise area, likely exploring on its own. "Commander Orvik," Mara said into the comm, keeping her voice steady. "The cub is missing." "I'm going to find it." The response was immediate. "Lieutenant, you can't just wander alone. It could be in danger, or cause danger."
"I understand," Mara said, "but rushing blindly will only make it harder."
"I need to track it calmly and carefully." Orvik sighed, reluctantly giving her clearance. Mara grabbed a portable scanner, a small bag of treats, and her communicator, then stepped into the deeper part of the dome. The cub had left subtle tracks, tiny paw prints in the synthetic soil, faint scratches on the plants. Mara followed them, moving carefully, scanning the area. The further she went, the more she realized how clever the cub was. It had climbed, jumped, and even tested her patience, leaving a trail that was both clear and misleading at the same time. Mara smiled. Humans had an edge here. Machines could follow a track, but only a human could anticipate behavior, understand curiosity, and predict the next move. Hours passed. The dome's internal systems hummed quietly. Birds from alien trees chirped strangely, and plants moved slightly with the artificial wind. Mara's eyes caught a small movement in the distance, a flicker of bronze and green. The cub. She approached slowly, crouching behind a large leaf, watching as it sniffed around a cluster of plants. And then she saw it. Something else was there too, a predator, larger than any human could handle alone, its claws scraping against the synthetic soil. The cub was cornered, its small body trembled slightly, unsure. Mara's mind raced, but she stayed calm. Panic would not help her. Observation, patience, and careful action would. Mara scanned the surroundings quickly, looking for objects she could use for distraction. A low-hanging branch, a small hovering drone, even the sound of her voice. Everything could be used strategically. She stepped carefully, crouching low, letting the predator focus on her movement rather than the cub. "Hey there," she called softly, her tone firm but calm. The predator froze, tilting its head. Mara tossed a small object from her bag, not at the predator, but off to the side, to divert its attention. The predator lunged toward the noise, and Mara seized the moment. She guided the cub gently, whispering instructions, moving it behind her carefully to safety. Once they were a safe distance away, Mara looked down at the cub, whose chest heaved slightly from the near danger. It had learned quickly today, but it had also trusted her. She smiled, brushing some synthetic dirt from its fur. "You see?" Mara said softly. "Humans can think in ways no one else can. We adapt, we protect, We understand. The cub blinked at her, its small eyes shining. It had survived because Mara stayed calm, because she anticipated, because she acted with intelligence instead of fear. Back at the observation deck, the researchers watched in stunned silence as Mara led the cub safely through the dome. Even Commander Orvik raised an eyebrow, his usual stern demeanor softened by admiration. Dr. Hanley shook his head slowly. "I can't believe it," he said. "Most of us would have panicked. She just played along and saved it." Mara smirked quietly. "Sometimes playing along is the smartest move," she said. "Humans can survive and thrive because we can adapt, think ahead, and trust our instincts. That little cub just reminded everyone of that." For the rest of the day, Mara stayed with the cub, letting it explore under careful supervision. It nudged her sleeve gently again, as if sharing a silent understanding. Mara smiled and patted its head. The little creature had tested her, taught her patience, and now, together, they had faced danger and succeeded. And Mara knew this was only the beginning. Humans weren't just visitors on this planet. They were learners, adapters, and problem solvers. The cub had learned, but more importantly, Mara had shown the humans around her what it meant to be truly human in the face of the unknown. The jungle dome felt different after the storm. Leaves dripped with condensation, and the air was heavy with the smell of wet soil and alien blooms. Mara Kessler moved carefully, scanning the area for any signs of the cub. It had been restless during the night, slipping out of its sleeping area while the staff slept in shifts. Mara didn't panic. Humans had a way of thinking that machines and instincts could not match, but she knew that the dome, though controlled, could be dangerous if one misstep occurred. The cub had learned quickly, but its curiosity was a double-edged sword. Mara followed its faint paw prints, pausing at intervals to listen. Every sound in the dome was amplified after the storm. Water dripping from leaves, a branch snapping somewhere in the distance, the low hum of the station's systems. The cub was clever, but it was still small, and Mara could not afford to underestimate the alien ecosystem. She crouched near a patch of thick ferns, peering through the leaves. There it was, a flicker of bronze-green movement near a glowing plant cluster. Mara approached silently, careful to avoid alerting the cub to her presence in a way that might startle it. The little creature sniffed the air and tilted its head. Mara smiled. It was always thinking, always analyzing. That was one of the things she admired most about it. But then she noticed something else, another presence, something large, lurking in the shadows beyond the plant cluster. Mara froze. The creature was invisible at first, but the slight rustle of leaves and a low growl confirmed her suspicion. It was a predator, larger than any human could face alone, with claws designed for tearing and eyes that gleamed in the dim light. The cub had wandered too close. Its small body quivered slightly, ears back, unsure of how to respond. Mara's mind raced, but she kept her breathing steady. Panic was useless. Observation and strategy would save them. She crouched lower, analyzing her surroundings. There were low-hanging branches, a shallow trench, and a small hovering drone nearby, a human-made tool that could be used creatively. "All right," Mara whispered to herself. "Let's do this carefully." She tossed a small object from her pack toward a distant area, careful to make a noise that would attract the predator's attention. The larger creature turned immediately, moving toward the distraction. Mara seized the moment. She crouched, guiding the cub gently with her hand signals, keeping its attention on her, and moved slowly behind a thick cluster of alien ferns. The predator lunged at the false target, and Mara used the distraction to move the cub to a safer area. Every step was deliberate. She understood the predator's behavior well enough to predict its movement and to guide the cub without startling it. She had done similar exercises with her team back on Earth during survival drills, but nothing matched this. This was living, unpredictable intelligence, not simulation. Once they were a safe distance away, Mara let the cub rest. It panted lightly, but its eyes were bright. It had survived because it had trusted her guidance. Mara smiled down at it, feeling a sense of pride and relief. "You're clever," she whispered. "But you also know how to listen. That's why we survive." She stayed with the cub for a few minutes, observing the predator from a distance. Its large eyes scanned the area, claws scraping against the synthetic soil. Mara realized the predator wasn't mindless. It was calculating, but she had something it didn't: adaptability. Humans could think creatively, improvise, and anticipate behavior in a way no other species on this planet could. Mara's communicator buzzed quietly. Dr. Hanley's voice came through, shaky but curious.
"Lieutenant, status report."
"Is the cub safe?" Mara kept her voice calm. "It's fine. I've moved it to a safe area. The predator is distracted, and I'm keeping track of it." There was a pause on the line. Then Hanley's voice. You're incredible. Most of us would have panicked." Mara smirked, glancing down at the cub. "Panic doesn't solve anything. Calm observation and action do." As the day went on, Mara explored deeper into the dome, leading the cub through a series of careful exercises designed to reinforce its learning. She had noticed something important. The cub wasn't just following instructions, it was anticipating her signals, experimenting, and even correcting its mistakes. Humans could understand this level of intelligence and work with it in ways the station's automated systems could not. They reached a part of the dome that housed an abandoned observation outpost. The walls were lined with screens and consoles, some still active, others powered down. Mara could see that the cub was intrigued by the blinking lights and the small buttons on the consoles. It pawed at one, causing a soft beep to sound. Mara chuckled softly. Curiosity is good, but focus is better. She guided the cub toward a control panel where she could use visual cues and hand gestures to train it further. The cub responded immediately, pressing buttons with its paws and nudging levers in ways that produced small, controlled results. Mara watched closely, adjusting her instructions based on its reactions. This was human ingenuity in action. Machines could mimic input and output, but only humans could adapt in real time, anticipate unexpected reactions, and teach a completely foreign species without words. Suddenly the cub paused. Its ears twitched and it emitted a soft alert sound. Mara followed its gaze and froze. Another predator had appeared, larger than the one before. It was circling, clearly interested in the small cub and observing Mara's movements carefully. Mara's mind worked quickly. This time she had no time for trial and error. She scanned the environment, noting potential distractions: a low-hanging panel, a loose branch, a reflective surface that could catch light and divert attention. Mara whispered softly, encouraging the cub to stay calm. The creature crouched low, eyes focused on her. Mara realized that this predator, like the first, could be tricked. But it would require split-second timing and precision. Mara threw a small object toward a reflective surface. The light bounced off, catching the predator's attention. It lunged toward the glint, and Mara used the distraction to guide the cub through a narrow passageway toward a secure alcove. She moved swiftly, carefully, and the cub followed without hesitation. Once they were safe, Mara knelt beside the little creature. It panted lightly, but its eyes were alert and intelligent. Mara ran a hand through its fur. "See? Humans can think differently. We adapt. We survive because we understand and react, not because we're strongest."
By now, the other researchers were fully aware of the cub's capabilities.
Dr. Hanley's voice came through the communicator again, this time full of awe. "Lieutenant, the cub, it's not just intelligent. It's learning at a rate I've never seen before. And your calm, adaptive approach has made all the difference." Mara smiled faintly. "Exactly. Observation, trust, patience, and action. That's how humans survive and thrive, even in an alien environment." Later, Mara guided the cub back to the main research area, where the storm-damaged sections had been repaired. The cub moved with ease now, confident in its understanding of Mara's signals and of its environment. It had learned quickly, but more importantly, it had learned to trust human judgment and human calm. The next day, Mara demonstrated the cub's abilities to the station council. The little creature moved through a series of exercises flawlessly, reacting to her gestures, pressing switches, and solving small puzzles. The council members watched in stunned silence. Mara's approach had turned what could have been a chaotic situation into a demonstration of human ingenuity and adaptability. Commander Orvik, still skeptical, finally nodded.
I see it now. Humans aren't just surviving here.
We're learning, adapting, and influencing the environment in ways no other species can. That is impressive, Mara smirked quietly. It's what humans do. We adapt, we understand, and we act when others hesitate. The cub, sensing the admiration and attention, nuzzled Mara's sleeve playfully. She laughed softly, brushing its fur. This small, sharp-nibbed creature had taught the station a lesson in intelligence, trust, and adaptability. And humans, she realized, were capable of more than anyone had expected. That night, Mara sat beside the cub, watching the glowing plants sway gently in the artificial breeze. The little creature blinked slowly at her, a quiet acknowledgement of the day's events. Mara reached down and patted it. We make a good team, don't we? The cub tilted its head, as if agreeing. Mara smiled. Humans could thrive because they could think, adapt, and remain calm under pressure. Machines and instincts had their limits. But humans had ingenuity, creativity, and trust. And with that combination, no predator, no storm, no challenge was too great. As the lights dimmed for the night cycle, Mara looked out at the jungle dome. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more tests, and perhaps even greater dangers. But she knew one thing for certain. Humans could face the unknown and come out stronger, cleverer, and wiser. And together with the cub, she would continue to prove it. The sun-like lights of the dome glowed softly over the jungle as Mara Kessler prepared the cub for a demonstration. The little creature had become more confident over the past weeks, responding instantly to her hand signals, gestures, and voice commands. What had started as a small experiment had turned into something extraordinary. The station council, the researchers, and even Commander Orvik were gathering today to witness what humans could accomplish when they combined intelligence, patience, and adaptability. Mara crouched near the cub, adjusting the small harness that allowed her to guide it gently during exercises. The creature twitched its ears and blinked at her, alert and playful. Mara smiled. This was no longer just training. It was a showcase of human ingenuity in the face of alien challenges. "All right, little one," she whispered. "Let's show them what humans and you can do together." The demonstration began. Mara directed the cub through a series of tasks designed to highlight its learning and intelligence. First, it solved a simple puzzle box, retrieving a treat after carefully sliding panels and manipulating levers. The council members murmured in amazement, some even leaning forward in disbelief. Machines could have replicated these actions with repeated programming, but only humans could teach a foreign species to learn through observation, trust, and guidance. Next, Mara led the cub through an obstacle course that simulated potential dangers in the dome. Low-hanging branches, uneven terrain, small water hazards, and unfamiliar plants that could startle or confuse. Each time Mara gave subtle cues, sometimes just a glance, a hand gesture, or a shift in posture. The cub responded instantly, navigating the course with grace and confidence. A small section of the dome had been modified for the final test. A simulated predator, similar to the ones they had encountered during the storm, was placed near the cub's path. Mara stayed close, keeping her movements calm but deliberate. The cub paused, recognizing the potential danger. Mara crouched slightly, giving a subtle signal. The cub carefully maneuvered around the predator, using the same strategies Mara had taught it during their earlier encounters. The council was silent. No alarms, no chaos. Just careful, intelligent action. Mara's heart swelled with quiet pride. Humans had shown once again that fear and rigidity were not the answer. Calm thinking, adaptation, and trust were what mattered. Finally, the cub reached the end of the course, where Mara had placed a small device that required a combination of logic and observation to unlock. The creature paused briefly, thinking through its options, then nudged the correct levers in sequence. The device opened with a soft click, revealing a glowing treat inside. The cub pounced in delight, nuzzling Mara's hand as if sharing the victory. The room erupted into applause. Even Commander Orvik, who had been the most skeptical, stood and nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. Dr. Hanley whispered to another researcher, "I've never seen anything like this. It's incredible." Mara crouched and looked at the cub. The little creature blinked up at her, playful and proud. "You see," she said softly, "humans aren't just observers. We adapt, we learn, we teach, and together we thrive." The council requested a full report afterward, eager to understand the methods Mara had used to train the cub and demonstrate its intelligence. She explained each step carefully, observation first, understanding second, and trust-based guidance third. The cub had been crucial in illustrating a fundamental point about humans. We could think creatively, respond instinctively, and adapt to environments that no other species could manage. Mara's methods went beyond training a single alien species. They were a reminder that humanity's greatest strengths were not physical power or advanced technology alone. They were courage, intellect, empathy, and the ability to improvise. The cub had been a living example of this lesson. After the council meeting, Mara stayed in the dome with the cub, letting it explore freely under careful supervision. It pawed at glowing plants, chased small drones, and occasionally tugged at her sleeve, as it had when they first met. Mara laughed quietly, remembering the first bite, the panic, and the calm she had maintained. That small, seemingly reckless act of curiosity had sparked a journey that proved humanity's potential. "Humans and cubs," she said softly, brushing the creature's fur. "We can handle anything if we stay smart and calm." The cub tilted its head and blinked slowly, as if agreeing. Mara smiled, realizing the bond they had formed was more than simple training. It was mutual respect and understanding. Humans could teach, protect, and guide, but they could also learn from the creatures they encountered. The cub had taught her patience, observation, and subtlety in ways no classroom or simulation ever could. Night fell over the dome, and Mara sat on a smooth rock, watching the small alien glow of the plants and the quiet movements of other creatures in the jungle. The cub curled beside her, safe and content. Mara thought about the weeks they had spent together, the storms, the predators, the training, and the small victories. Every moment had been a test, a chance to prove that humanity's ingenuity was not just theoretical. It was real, practical, and effective, even on an alien world. Her communicator buzzed softly. "Dr. Duck," Hanley's voice came through, filled with admiration. "Lieutenant, the council is amazed. They want your methods replicated for other teams. You've proven that humans can do more than survive. They can excel anywhere."
Mara smiled faintly. "Thank you, Doctor."
Remember, it's not just about training or technology. It's about how humans think, adapt, and respond. That's what makes us, us. The cub let out a soft purr, brushing its small head against Mara's hand. She laughed softly, feeling the warmth of their connection. The little creature had taught everyone a valuable lesson. Intelligence and adaptability were not limited to humans, but humans had the unique ability to teach, guide, and collaborate in ways no other species could. Mara looked out at the dome one last time before heading to her quarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new creatures, and perhaps even new discoveries. But she knew one thing for certain: humanity had proven it could not only survive, but also thrive. Even in worlds filled with unknown dangers and intelligent life forms, the cub followed her to the exit of the training area, tugging gently at her sleeve. Mara smirked. "I see you're still playful," she said. "Don't worry. We have a lot more to learn together." As she closed the hatch behind them, Mara thought about what had started as a small bite and panic from the other humans. That bite had sparked curiosity, demonstrated patience, and highlighted a lesson about human adaptability and courage. Mara realized that humans were not limited by fear or unfamiliarity. When paired with calm thinking and clever action, they could turn even the most unpredictable situation into an opportunity for growth and success. The cub nuzzled her sleeve once more, playful and confident. Mara chuckled, feeling a sense of satisfaction she had rarely experienced on Earth. Humanity's greatest advantage was not its technology or strength alone, but its ingenuity, courage, and creativity. And today the cub had become a symbol of that truth. The jungle dome stretched endlessly before them, full of mystery, danger, and discovery. Mara and the cub moved forward together, a team united by trust, intelligence, and curiosity. They had faced challenges, outwitted predators, and demonstrated the best of humanity. And in that partnership, Mara knew they would continue to thrive, explore, and succeed where others might falter. As the night deepened, the dome glowed softly, a quiet reminder of life, intelligence, and adaptability. Mara looked down at the cub, smiling at its playful eyes and alert posture. "We make a good team," she whispered. The cub blinked slowly, content and trusting. Mara knew they had proven more than just survival. They had shown what humans could accomplish when they stayed calm, clever, and brave in the face of the unknown. And with that, Mara and the cub disappeared into the glowing jungle, ready for whatever the future held. Humanity had triumphed, not through strength alone, but through courage, creativity, and intelligence. And that was a power no alien predator, storm, or challenge could ever take away.